Hey everybody, welcome to the Curt Schilling Baseball Show, episode 53. Got a special one for you. Gonna run into a former teammate of mine in an interview I think you're gonna love. But first, real quick, wanted to touch base on what's going on in baseball right now. So many of you I know that are hardcore fans understand the waiver wire and how that works, but a lot of people don't. I know players that don't. So about this time of the year, every year, you see a ton of players going through what's called waivers. There are two kinds of waivers. There are revocable and irrevocable waivers. During the season, you might see players put on waivers every now and then taken off. Early in the year, teams can put a player on waivers, and basically what that means is that gives all the other teams in baseball access to that player. And in reverse order, from worst to first, a team can claim a player on revocable waivers early in the year. The team that puts them on waivers can call them back. Sometimes it's to find out if somebody has interest in a player. Sometimes you put players on waivers because you need to open up a spot on your 40-man roster. Guys that go on waivers are guys that are on the 40-man roster, and you can only have 40 players on that roster. So those spots are valuable. Now, what happens now is at the end of the year, we have this irrevocable waivers. And what that means is that any players put on waivers now, if you claim them, you own them. And that might not sound like a big deal, but this is how you get rid of contracts you don't want or players you aren't planning on having next year. And a team that went all in at the deadline and ended up going right down the crapper showed you what it looks like. The Angels put Lucas Giolito, Matt Moore, Ronaldo Lopez, Dominic Leone, Hunter Renfroe, Randall Grichuk on waivers. I think Giolito and Moore has been probably as good as anybody on that staff. But the Giolito one, I think, caught everybody by surprise. Number one, because I think everybody was surprised the Angels ended up getting him. But more importantly, he's got time left on this contract at a big number, and somebody picks him up, and I think somebody will pick him up. They own the contract and the player and all the money. It's a way for, like I said, teams dump contracts at the end of the year. Try to anyway. The Dodgers waived Josh Donaldson, Harrison Bader, Mets waived Carrasco, Tigers waived Jose Cisneros, reliever. But you can pick them up for, I think it's $50,000, and you own them in their contracts. And then waivers are in reverse order. If you pick somebody, you go to the bottom of the list, and the next team's up, and things like that.
And if a team rosters them right now, Curt, they can be on the playoff roster if they roster them by September 1st.
September 1st, right, correct. And that's why it happens now, because teams that want to roster a player, I think you're going to see a team like the Marlins. I could see the Marlins, if depending on ownership, could be very active here. And some teams that are playing better. I was actually surprised that we didn't see a lot of Padre contracts on the market, on the waiver wire with those big deals, and given how badly they're playing. The other thing it clears you up, if you clear waivers, you can outright a guy and send him to the minor leagues without having to worry about him being taken out by another club. So that's waivers in a nutshell. So look for if you look in the past, there have been times where teams have picked up a kind of a monster contract out of nowhere because they wanted to plug a hole with a guy that they knew that they were probably going to want for the postseason if they made it. I remember the Padres doing it with Randy Myers a long time ago, picking him up late in the year. So anyway, that's waivers in a nutshell. Now to the interview. A guy I had the privilege of playing with and who's been a friend for life, who I would argue is probably one of the more underrated players of my generation, played 18 years in the big leagues, ended his career with this 2,769 hits. That's 31st all time. What did I say, Bill? Over 24,000 players in the big leagues?
Yeah.
In history, 31 players. This player was the 31st player all time in hits. And runs, he was 60 something in runs. But point being, this guy was really, really good. Johnny Damon patrolled center field for us in 2004. Had the game of his life in Game 7 of the ALCS, hitting 2 home runs, including a grand slam to pretty much ice the game. And was I think, very underrated defending player. He went with the moniker of idiots for the 04 team. That kind of stuck. The media ran with it, but I think you're going to find out he's anything but an idiot when it comes to life and sports. So I hope you guys enjoyed the interview. Stay tuned. Joining me now is a man who really does need no introduction to anybody that's watched baseball in the last 3 decades. A guy I had the honor and privilege of playing with for a couple years in Boston, doing some pretty cool stuff. Listen, Johnny, before I bring you on, and by the way, his name's Johnny Damon, and you'll get to see him, ladies. I want to mention something to you. I mean, you and I played together, and that whole idiot thing in Boston was fun as hell to be a part of. But I don't know that people understand how good you were. And I wanted to mention something. Since 1876, there have been 20,448 baseball players put on a big league uniform. Johnny Damon ranks 31st all-time in runs scored and 55th all-time in hits, 68th in stolen bases. Johnny, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Good to see you. Great to talk to you. How's everything going there?
Hey, Curt, everything's going great. Great seeing you. And, that championship run we had in 2004, you can never top that. And I'm so happy that I got to share it with you. I'm glad you came over from Arizona and brought your World Series expertise, and what a great time. I mean, they're going to remember us forever, and next year's 20 years, brother.
It is. It's exactly right. It's 20 years, which is amazing. And we'll get into the baseball stuff because there's a lot of laughs to be had. But first, let's talk about life. You look great. I saw you. I saw you in the yellow of the Savannah Bananas. You got to talk me through that. What was that like?
Oh, it's such a great experience. I've joined them 3 times this year, and the last time I picked up a bat was back in March. And man, that bat was so heavy this time. I mean, I should at least try to go out there and practice and try to get in shape.
Hey, you didn't do it when you played. Why would you do it now?
Well, because I'm almost 50, so I've got to get my butt in gear. But what they do, it's great for baseball. It gives kids a different outlook on baseball. You can go out there and you can have fun. Obviously, you can't dance around as much as these guys do, but right. They're fabulous. I mean, they sold.
But it's funny because you and I come from one of the last generations of, I don't want to say old school, but baseball was different, very different back then. And I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and I was a traditionalist and all those things. And I look at my initial look at Savannah was like, this is a clown show, blah blah. But the fans freaking love it, and. You know what? At the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's about putting people in the seats and having kids come out like we did as kids, enjoying the game. And as crazy it looks like it's a hell of a lot of fun for the players.
Oh, absolutely. And probably the only team I can sign for a day with as well. But they sold 600,000 tickets this year with 1 million on the waiting list. And next year they're going to go play at some big league ballparks, just like Fenway. I know they're going to make the trip to the new ballpark for the Rangers and the Astros, I believe Padres, Petco Park. So 8 major league ballparks next year.
So, hey, let me ask you something. I didn't realize that the rules are drastically different in a lot of. Did you have to unlearn some baseball to play?
Yes, especially when you draw a walk, you have to sprint as far as you can go, but they can tag you out if you went too far. So they do a great job. I mean, the one time that I did walk, everybody touched the ball in, I would say, 7 seconds. Pitcher already touched the ball, third base, left field, center, like however they do it.
Right.
They do it great. And the trick plays are amazing. I could never do a backflip after like catching a ball like these guys can. And they do get a lot of great guys out to participate. I know they have a game against some Major League Baseball alumni in a couple days, I believe September 2nd up in Savannah. But they're doing
funny
great.
because I was watching you and I was thinking about the fact that it felt like when we played that Manny was trying to play Savannah Banana baseball sometimes, for real.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hitting 340 and hitting 40 home runs and all things go with that. So, talk to me about how's Michelle doing and the kids. First of all,
Michelle,
wait, hold on. Let me set the stage for all of you fathers out there that have a daughter. Just get ready for this one. So, Johnny, how's Michelle doing? And tell everybody how many kids you have and all that.
yeah, Michelle's doing fantastic, and the kids, they're growing up fast. We have two that have graduated from college already. One's going to law school, and my son's actually taking a couple more classes. He's into politics now. He's up in Tallahassee doing his thing.
He's a
And
conservative.
yes, sir. Yeah, I mean,
So you have 6 daughters.
6 daughters and 2 boys, and our little son just turned 7, and he came after a vasectomy. So
Oh, good. Well, you're
yeah,
still,
so
yeah.
we
You were
tried to
always, hey,
stop.
you were always potent. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
God bless you.
yeah. So
Yeah.
the second one's worked so far. So it's
Yeah.
been 7 years, so we've been good.
Hey, and
I,
you do look good. Actually, you look like you're in really good shape. And that was always, and I want to talk to you about you as a baseball player. I mean, you came out of high school, drafted 35th. You were probably the premier high school player in the country at the time. And one of the things I don't think a lot of people would know, if you go back and look, you had 235 bombs in your career. And I always marveled at the fact that you were built like a football player. You had football player speed. You were a leadoff hitter, and I don't feel like you ever lost your speed. At least when I was playing with you, you were still, that was always an asset for you. And you're in a bigger body, and that's not it's a Mike Trout kind of a combination, in my opinion, right? You look at Mike Trout, and when you stand next to him, he's a monster of a man, and you don't realize, but you were always that big guy with a lot of speed. How did you keep that speed? Because you played the game hard. You played the game, well, you had a horrible concussion, but you played the game hard. And a lot of guys that do that run a lot, they end up getting worn down and worn out because of that. You never did. How did you keep yourself like that?
well, you have to learn, because nowadays a lot of these guys start training a couple days after the season. They never
Right.
get a break. So I really didn't get going until the 1st of February. And
Right.
then I built myself up during spring training. That's why I was very durable, and
Right.
I really didn't want to take time off. But I was fortunate and blessed with great speed, and I always hustled. So the minute you start
Yeah.
learning how to jog, your body's going to get used to it. So I was always used to sprinting, and because of it, was able to continue to play on winning teams, and able to make infielders crazy, because they
Right.
take one step up and it's
Right.
bang bang, or they throw the ball away.
Hey, and you got to remind me, I got to ask you about one of the new rules. But first, I want to talk about this. Excuse me, the whole thing around the '04 Sox, the idiots, and all that other stuff. It was kind of something you said in jest in an interview,
Yeah,
and it just kind
Kevin
of took off.
Millar brought it up.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Well, he was an idiot, but
right.
that's neither here nor there. But you had what I always call it. You had a really high baseball IQ, and that is a skill that it's hard to scout sometimes. But I always liked the fact that you knew what your job was. And I look at games, and people talk about game-winning home runs and game-winning hits and stuff, and I always used to go back and try and look at an at bat or a play in a game that might have happened in the 7th inning that ended up being, and you had a lot of those things because of your at bats. You were a guy who, and I don't know if this was a practice skill, and I want you to tell me and talk to young hitters about it. You could keep the ball, you could foul balls off, and it almost was like you did it on purpose. And you would run at bat. Well, but you would run at bats out. The at bat in what was it, in the '09 World Series? The 9-pitch at bat against Lidge.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the game-winning at bat in my head. Obviously, things have to happen afterwards. But is that a skill you always had, keeping the bat on the ball?
Well, I always know to compete, and there are so many times that you don't want to get rung up on a close call as well. So you have to keep battling. And I just feel like that skill is to go out there and continue to battle.
Right.
Because obviously I would love to have that pitch right down the middle that I could hammer out of the ballpark, but the pitcher on the mound is not going to do that. So I learned how to work counts, try not to strike out. Was one of the best 2-strike hitters in the game because of it. So,
Right.
and fortunately, it got me in a great situation to, you know,
there she is.
There she is.
Oh,
Hello. Yeah, to compete and to play on winning teams, and that's what I always wanted to do as a kid, was to be a world champion.
Well, I mentioned that because of this. So as a pitcher for me, I was always about, you show me a guy that strikes out 100 times a year, I'm going to show you a guy with holes that I can exploit.
Yeah.
And one of the things I always marveled at, I always wanted that first inning to get through. I don't want to use all my pitches. I want to get my fastball established. So when I have a leadoff hitter who works a 9 or 10 pitch at bat, and I always looked at that as almost like a hit. You go out, you make an out, but you run through 10 pitches, you get the first 2 guys behind you hitting. They've already seen everything the guy's got.
Right.
And I mean, was that an approach for you? Like when you let off a game, were you trying to, obviously you're trying to get on base, obviously you're trying to get a hit, but drawing your bats out like that to me was such a skill.
Yeah, there was a time versus David Wells when he was with Toronto. I just told the guys, I'm going to make him throw so many pitches. I'm going to foul off every tough pitch. And I believe we got up to about 18 or 19. And David Wells all of a sudden was like, yeah. And then I also showed the bunt. So I made him run a little bit. But my job is to make players around me better. So throughout my entire career, the guy who hit in front of me and behind me always had career years. And I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud to make teammates better and just sacrifice for the team. I mean, I very easily could have hit for a higher average. I could have like sacked, bunted, or did all that easy stuff, or bunt with a big lead, or steal bases with a big lead or a big deficit. But I want to play the game the right way, have respect, and therefore not too many of you guys threw at me on purpose. So people respect it.
Because that was a stolen base. You didn't want to do it. But I think, and I want to say that because again, Johnny, a lot of what came out of 2004 was, the idiots and stuff like that, but we were a professional team and we played the game the right way. We played the game as hard as it could be played. And I think Terry deserves some credit for that, because I think we all bought into what he was selling. And, as the leadoff hitter, you set the tone. And in much the same way like Henderson did and Tim Raines did, you had your own little style. But I just want to emphasize to people, your baseball IQ was off the charts. And as someone who pitched, I was a guy, I moved you around defensively when I was on the mound, because I had kind of 3.5 outfielders. In Fenway, you had the right center field gap, which was an enormous piece of land. Yes. And having someone like you that could run. And that was the other thing. I had the honor of playing in front of some great center fielders, you and Steve Finley, and guys who as a fly ball pitcher, I always thought Fenway was a hitter's ballpark, and came to realize that if I pitched to center field, 2 things: 1, I got a lot of turf, and 2, I got you out there. And when you were out there, and let me just segue, Manny was in left for the most part when you were out there. I thought Manny was as good as anybody in Fenway playing the wall. In the monster. What was it like? I mean, were you the quarterback in center field? Were you with Trot and right, Manny and left? Were you moving guys around? Were you involved in positioning?
Oh, always. And Trot was a very smart outfielder too. He knew how to play guys. We knew how to look at each other and start moving. Manny did play the Fenway Park wall very well. And I only had to play left and center field for about 20 pitches because he still was inside the scoreboard. So, but only 20 times. So that's not.
And he was a great cutoff man.
He's a great cutoff man. The only time he dove the entire year was
ever, which is still one of the greatest highlights ever. Hey, let's talk about 2004. We started out, we were a 500 team. We were good. The Yankees were running away and all the things that go with that. It ends up, we get into the fight, and then about 10, 12 days later, we start kicking it in the ass and taking names and stuff like that. Give me some of your 2 or 3 like most vivid memories of the 2004 season and why they're the ones that stick out for you.
Yeah, well, obviously winning the championship, but
Yeah.
yeah, that game with the fight and everything, it just kind of just brought us all back to earth and said and told us we've got to kick it into gear. We remember what happened the previous year with the Aaron F. Boone home run, and granted there was a lot to overcome that later on in the season, but my legs were jelly. So what I ended up doing, I found an 8-foot basketball rim and did dunks just to get my legs like explosive again. I wish I could say
Really?
they were 10 feet, but I got my
Yeah.
legs going again. And as a center fielder, if your legs aren't there, it's
Yeah.
going to be tough. You're not going to catch routine fly balls. You're not going to have the balance at the plate. So I made sure I got my legs going, and it was just some explosive jumps.
I really felt like when we got Orlando and Minkiewicz and Dave Roberts, I really felt like that was when we became the team we became.
Yeah.
Defensively, we had been struggling. Um, with Nomar and his injury and Pokey having to play around the infield. And then I thought Orlando really settled our infield. Dave Roberts gave us another guy in the outfield with you that could run, that could do some things, and Dougie solidified at first base. But I really felt like we came together after that. And everybody talks about the fight, and we came back. Well, after the fight, we played 500 ball for about a week,
Right.
and then after that, it was all she wrote. We took the bull by the horns, and I got to tell you that when I think about you, I think about the fact that you were able. I thought you had the great ability to never let Monday affect Tuesday. And
Right.
I don't think it ever showed itself more than in Game 7 of the ALCS. They had pitched you well the entire series, and they had for the most part, in a sense, shut you down as much as you could be shut down. But then you show up in Game 7 and talk about Game 7, the at-bats. You let off the game, and then you end up hitting the 2 home runs, the grand slam, which, by the way, neither one was cheap. I mean, you went big time on the granny. But talk about that game, those Game 7 at-bats, and your mentality going in.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I want to say how great of a shortstop was Orlando Cabrera.
Oh,
I
and a
mean,
great
just
teammate.
everything. He could bunt, hit and run, do
He
everything.
was so smooth.
Yeah. Okay. So back to Game 7. I felt pretty good the entire series at the plate. I was seeing the pitches. I probably took too many pitches early on in the series, but that's what I do as a leadoff guy. Took some extra BP. The bat started feeling better. And fortunately enough, we got to win Game 4, got to win 5 and 6. And then Game 7, I started off with a base hit, stolen base, and I had to freeze on that ball next to Jeter. It ended up getting thrown at home. So they take the starter out, Kevin Brown, and bring the lefty in for Big Poppy. Fortunately, he got that home run, and then we're up. So the next inning, we got bases loaded, and I remember how Mike Mussina pitched me the year before. He just wanted that strike 1, strike 2 on me. So I wanted to, worst case scenario, get 1 run in, and worst case, get a sac fly to the outfield. Well, got jammed a little bit on that grand slam, but with my strength, and I was able to get it to the second or third row. But the next at bat, I mean, that ball took a long time before it landed. I absolutely
that was a big boy homer.
And that pitch was on the outside corner, so I was able to cover both sides of the plate.
Right.
And that's another thing that made my career 18 years. I was able to cover the plate both ways and hit any pitch, any direction.
And you know what? That's something I was talking about earlier, and I wanted to mention. I remember thinking about you in some ways like Carl Crawford. I used to watch Carl Crawford swing, and Carl Crawford would foul off pitches that Vladimir Guerrero couldn't foul off. And it wasn't that he was fouling them off, is that he was swinging at them to begin with. But you did the same thing. You had a very short stroke, but you had the ability to cover 25 to 30 inches of plate.
Yeah.
And that's, I always tell guys, if you, as a young hitter, you can't cover both sides. If I'm throwing 95, you have to pick one. And usually I can beat you on the other one, but you were never that guy. You were that guy. It didn't matter what side you would put nasty pitches, foul them off, foul them off, foul them off, foul them off till you got a mistake.
Yeah.
And again, that to me was such a gift and an art and it's not something I don't think you're not taught that. That's something you have and it's a skill you nurture and you were to the day you retired, you were always that hitter. Did hitting coaches ever mess with that?
No, I mostly just wanted to battle until I got a better pitch, because like as you mentioned, it's really tough to cover both sides of the plate, and with all the different pitches coming, it's really tough to adjust from an off-speed pitch to a fastball. So you got to stay on the fastball and adjust to everything else. But even if you know what's coming, it's still hard
Right.
to hit. I mean, this game is so hard to begin with, but yeah, I had that ability, and fortunately, it kept me around the game for a long time.
So let's talk about a controversial aspect. You went from Boston to New York.
Yeah.
And not a lot of guys make that move for all the obvious reasons.
Right.
But you were one of the rare guys that it more than panned out. And I have this quote, I can't remember who said it, but I want to because you don't see this a lot from guys that made that move. One of a Boston writer said after 2006, he had 24 bombs, which was your career high. Has been worth every bit of the extra 12 million Steinbrenner ponied up to take him away from the Red Sox. The Yankees got a very good player while taking one away from their biggest competition. Now, the biggest thing in that whole deal, and the reason I never said you'd be a Yankee, was the haircut. I mean, that was you had to shave and look like a grown man. And what was it like playing in New York after playing in Boston?
Well, obviously, New York is a fantastic city, or it was a fantastic city.
Right.
Like, hopefully they can get back. But
Right.
you know, I wanted baseball to remain important, and what I had on the table was 52 million with the Yankees or zero at the time from the Red Sox. I mean, I
Right.
finally get an offer from the Red Sox after I agree to
Right.
the Yankees. So I didn't think they would let me walk. I mean,
I didn't either.
yeah, I bought a house in Boston because they said I would be there for a long time.
Right.
And I understand the business side. Looking back, Jacoby Ellsbury's a year away. They still had Manny on contract for a number of more years.
Yep.
I'm sure they wanted me for 1 year and see what happens, but unfortunately, I can't leave 3
Right.
years out there. And so
No,
it ended up working out for everybody. So you know, at the end of the day, it stunk for the fans because I was a favorite, and but I made the most of it. And
well, you still are. I think and that's one of the things about us in 04. I laugh because, you know, there's part of you as a player, you look at teams that you played on, and in some ways you're like, gosh, you know, if they win the championship this year, they're going to forget about us. And like, we played on a team no one will ever forget about. And in a year, and that's one of the reasons why, you know, you and I can not talk for 5 years or 10 years and show up in the room and just talk like we haven't been gone for a day.
right.
And I mean, we shared something special in front of special people too.
Yeah.
And I remember, I don't know why I remember this, but I remember when we were flying back after we had clinched against the Yankees, and we were pretty sauced, all of us on the plane. And we got back. You remember the bus ride from the airport to the field, and all the cars stopped on the freeway?
Oh yeah, that was amazing. You know, much better finish from the year before. That's for sure. Yeah. So, yeah, the year before I got back to Boston, and I just jumped in my car and started heading down to Florida. I mean, I was crushed, and people don't realize how crushed you get because you put everything on the line the entire year, and then for it to end, it hurts.
But people don't understand. You and I lived the same moment in different places. Like in '93, Joe Carter walked us off in the World Series. You know, you're sitting there and your body's full of every emotion you can imagine, and then one pitch later, everything's over.
Yeah.
And they don't. The finality of that, the suddenness of that, is shocking. And I, you know, it's one of the things that when I came there in 04 was I didn't have the baggage that guys had. I remember Millar talking about, I didn't want them to hit the ball to me in the ninth inning in 03 because I didn't want to be Bill Buckner. And I was like, wait, hold on a second. That, and there wasn't a lot of that, but it was more in the stands than it was. And that was the thing. That rivalry, I would argue that year was different, but most of that rivalry was in the stands. The fans didn't like each other, and the fans didn't like the opposing players and all the things that go with that. But there was a mutual respect there that when Rivera gets introduced in 05 opening day in Boston and gets a standing O, I thought that was like one of the coolest things that ever happened.
Oh, absolutely.
But you go on and 18 years. If you could sum it up and say in a sentence, the thing you're most proud of your career, what would it be?
Being a great teammate.
Agreed. I would agree that you really were. And you were a fun person. And it's funny because people don't understand the life to any extent and how hard it is. Everybody that's, Deion Sanders and Brian Jordan, guys who cross sports, talk about it. And it's true. The baseball schedule is the hardest schedule in professional sports by a landslide, because no matter how tired you are on Sunday night, the Sunday night ESPN game, which we were every Sunday because we played the Yankees, you get into a town at 4 a.m., you still got to go out the next day and play against Messina. And you got it. And so guys like you, I always laugh because I had Mirabelli on, and I used to laugh about the fact that you had to have guys on the bus that at 4 a.m. in customs in Toronto could make everybody laugh.
Correct. Yeah.
And you were one of the guys in that mix. And I'm gonna name a couple guys. Nate, just give me the first thought that comes to your mind of the player. Bill Miller.
Grinder. Very underrated. I mean, this guy was like
Agreed.
best. Yeah.
Kevin Millar.
Man.
That's it. That's perfect. That's perfect. That's perfect.
We couldn't have done it without him. We couldn't have done it without him. We stayed so loose, and it was so great when he joined our team in 2003, because I felt like my first year in Boston, I had to try to get guys going every single day. It still had that old time feeling. And when Kevin came, I was like, great. I don't have to do it all the time.
Derek Lowe.
Oh man, he's a hoot.
Yeah. People don't realize that, and it's one of my most memorable conversations was, you remember he got left off the rotation for the playoffs, and he was in the outfield. He was really, really upset. And I remember talking to him, say, hey, listen, dude, you're going to have to come in and get a big out at some point. Need you to be here. Need you to be present. And he ends up clinching 3 games. He ends up pitching all 3 clinchers and dominating game 7. Keith Folk.
Oh, Keith Folk. I mean, that's what we needed. We needed a closer. We didn't have one in 2003, and it came back and bit us. And you need to have a closer who can go in there and get the job done. And if he doesn't, he'll be ready the next day. And
I think he threw 200 innings in the playoffs.
Yeah,
it was just so. I thought he was the MVP of the postseason, along with D-Lo and Mark Bellhorn and
I thought Folky.
Jason Varitek.
Best game caller ever. And he's a captain. So I love playing with him. Another Central Florida boy. A lot of Central Florida guys on.
Yeah, he always annoyed me. He always annoyed me because, like you, he went around the locker room naked. And, physically, it was like, come on, dude, put something on already. You're lockering next to me. I can't do this every day. Best game caller I ever played for. The only time I think I ever shook him off, I lost a no-hitter. So I learned the hard way. So what are you doing now? I mean, I know you're retired. You're clearly, like I said, you're still obviously in as good a shape as you've been in a long time. What's life like right now for you?
Well, life is fantastic. I have my sports drink called A Game. We are.
Yeah, I love the shirt.
Yeah, we're in a lot of places in Arizona now, but up and down the East Coast, Shaw's Stop and Shop, Giant Eagle, Food Lion's been great to us in North Carolina area, Publix and Costco down here in the South, and a couple stores in Texas, and about 6,000 right now. And
nice.
It's a very clean hydration drink. Created it back in 2012. It was a hot summer. A lot of kids were dehydrated, many dying. mostly football players. So I wanted something that was cleaner than what's out there or what's been out there. And it tastes great and it's got a great name. I mean, you got to bring your A game every single,
Right.
whether you're a parent,
Yeah.
pitcher, hitter, teacher. Yeah.
I like
all
it.
the time.
A game. I have not seen that. I'm in Tennessee. I'm gonna have to give that a whirl. Hey, JD,
Oh, yeah,
listen,
we're in Publix in Tennessee. Yeah.
it is awesome to catch up with you. It's great to see you again. I love you to death, and I wish you nothing but the best, my friend.
Hey, thank you, brother. Say hello to the family. Love
I will do
always.
that. All right.
Great seeing you.
That's Johnny Damon in a nutshell. Hopefully you enjoyed that as much as I did because I had fun. Guys, it's Labor Day weekend. Anywhere you want to find your podcast, or anywhere you do find your podcast, you can find us. We'd like you to go to OutKick.com and find it there. But Apple, Spotify, everywhere else. Coming up on Tuesday will be the full interview with Rod Carew. So between now and Tuesday, have a wonderful Labor Day weekend. Take Justin Jefferson with your first pick in your football draft. Don't overthink it. And if you're second, you take Christian McCaffrey. And if you're sixth, you take Travis Kelce. So have a great fantasy draft, a great Labor Day weekend, and enjoy Hall of Famer Rod Carew on Tuesday.